The sterile hallway of Evergreen Retirement Home stretched into the pre-dawn gloom. Nia Jenkins, already bone-weary, moved like a shadow, checking on her first residence. Each step felt heavy, a quiet sigh escaping her lips as she braced for another impossible day. The medication cart area already buzzed with a frantic energy. Nia, alone on rounds, struggled to contain. Calls for assistance echoed, unanswered. Dr. Elias Thorne strode in, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the chaos. "Nurse Jenkins," he snapped. "Where is the box of PainEase? It was logged yesterday, and now it's gone." Nia flinched, her heart hammering. "Dr. Thorne, I'm handling 2 wings alone. I haven't reached that section yet." He merely sneered. "Excuses, Nia. Just find it." In Mrs. Gable's room, Nia offered a gentle smile. The elderly resident, frail, clutched Nia's hand. "Thank you for staying," Mrs. Gable whispered. "I haven't felt quite right. A bit foggy. And that new medicine yesterday? It just doesn't feel the same." Nia squeezed her hand, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "I'll look into it, Mrs. Gable. You rest." The room, slightly unkempt, hinted at more than just a missed cleaning. By late morning, Nia finally found a moment to check the supply closet, hoping to locate the missing PainEase. But the deeper she dug, the more her worry intensified. Not just one box was gone. There were discrepancies everywhere. A missing batch of bandages, a partial carton of antiseptic wipes, a nebulizer kit unaccounted for. She scribbled notes onto her clipboard, the pen scratching against the paper. This wasn't carelessness. This was a pattern. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. What was truly happening here? As Nia walked through the main lobby, her shoulders slumped, the weight of the day pressing down. She felt defeated, her usual resilience worn thin. A new security guard, tall and composed in his crisp uniform, stood by the entrance. Marcus Jones, or MJ as his name tag read, offered a calm, assessing gaze. "Morning, nurse," he said, his voice even. Nia managed a tired nod. He didn't smile, but his eyes, sharp and intelligent, seemed to take in everything. Her slumped posture, the faint tremor in her hand, the underlying tension in the air of Evergreen. He was new, but he seemed to see more than most. The new security guard, Marcus Jones, or MJ as he preferred, moved with a quiet precision uncommon for his role. Clad in a crisp, dark uniform, he systematically patrolled the exterior of Evergreen Retirement Home. His eyes weren't just scanning for intruders. They were dissecting, analyzing. He noted the blind spots in the outdated CCTV system, the loose gate latch in the service alley, the faint, lingering scent of disinfectant failing to mask something else. A delivery truck, unmarked and arriving unusually late for a morning drop-off, backed up to the loading bay. MJ observed its hurried unloading, the driver exchanging a terse nod with a staff member before speeding away. Irregular schedule, unverified contents, *MJ's mind cataloged, time-lax protocols everywhere. This wasn't just a security job. This was an investigation. Inside, the common room hummed with the forced cheer of a resident activity. Dr. Elias Thorne made his grand entrance, a performative smile plastered across his face as he greeted residents, his voice booming with feigned warmth. "Good morning, my dear friends. Aren't we all looking forward to bingo?" He moved through the room, a charismatic facade, until his eyes landed on Nia, quietly assisting Mrs. Gable. His smile tightened. "Nurse Jenkins, a word." He pulled her aside, his voice dropping but still sharp enough for nearby staff to hear. "Efficiency, Nia. We need more of it. These are not private conversations. Keep the flow moving." It was a public dressing down, thinly veiled as advice. Nia's shoulders tensed, her lips pressing into a thin line. From a corner, MJ watched, his expression unreadable. Thorne's charm was a flimsy curtain, and MJ saw the cruelty lurking behind it. During lunch service, the dining area buzzed with chatter. MJ, feigning interest in a crumpled newspaper, sat at a table near the entrance, his peripheral vision taking in the room. Nia moved with practiced grace, despite the visible exhaustion, serving plates of lukewarm food. As she leaned to place a tray before Mr. Henderson, a frail man with kind eyes, he reached for her arm, "Thank you, dear," he whispered, his voice raspy. "These pills you gave me this morning, they're much better. The other ones, they made me so sleepy, so confused." Nia offered a tired, empathetic smile, assuring him she'd check his chart. MJ's gaze sharpened, the newspaper forgotten. Sleepy and confused. He recalled Dr. Thorne's earlier accusation about missing PainEase. A quiet gratitude, a vague complaint. It was a thread, and MJ was already pulling at it. Late afternoon, a chill wind swept through the back alley. MJ conducted another routine check, his attention drawn to the overflowing dumpster. Something glinted amidst the discarded food wrappers and cardboard. Donning gloves, he sifted through the trash, his methodical movements revealing a torn, crumpled box. It was for PainEase, the exact medication Dr. Thorne had accused Nia of misplacing. MJ's thumb traced the packaging. His eyes narrowed. Clearly stamped on the side, in bold red ink, was an expiration date months in the past. And the box, though empty, was designed for a bulk supply, not a single dose. This wasn't a misplaced item, it was a deliberate disposal, expired medication, missing inventory, Thorne's accusations. The pieces were beginning to fit, forming a grim picture. His suspicions had turned into certainty. The nurses' station hummed with the low glow of computer screens as Nia prepared to clock out. Her shift had ended, but the day's accusations from Dr. Thorne still weighed heavily. She overheard him again, passing by, muttering to another nurse about her chronic sloppiness. Nia buried her face in her hands for a fleeting moment, a silent, desperate plea escaping her lips. I can't keep up," she whispered to a colleague, who merely shrugged, already overwhelmed herself. As Nia lifted her head, her eyes met MJ's. He was walking past, ostensibly checking a door lock, but his gaze was direct, unwavering. He offered a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement, a shared understanding that spoke volumes. It was a flicker of empathy in a sterile, unfeeling environment, and for a moment, Nia felt a fragile spark of hope. The security office was a dim cave late that night, lit only by the blue glow of a monitor. Marcus M.J. Jones, shedding his overt, security guard demeanor, became a silent, focused hunter. His fingers danced across the keyboard, bypassing firewalls and access protocols with practiced ease. Digital inventory logs blossomed across the screen, a labyrinth of numbers that MJ navigated with surgical precision. He found them. Discrepancies, subtle at first, then glaring, all tied to specific access codes used only by Dr. Elias Thorne. MJ's gaze sharpened, then shifted to the grainy CCTV footage, playing silently in a smaller window. There was Thorne, a shadow slipping into the supply room after hours, a regular, deliberate ghost in the machine. This wasn't negligence. This was a pattern. A plan. And Nia, he realized, was caught right in its crosshairs. The Evergreen parking lot was cloaked in the deceptive peace of late evening. MJ, positioned in the shadowed recesses of his parked car, watched the main entrance through a discreet lens. His patience was rewarded. Dr. Elias Thorne emerged, not heading home, but lingering near a beat-up sedan that pulled in moments later. A shadowy figure, face obscured by the twilight, and a low-brimmed cap, stepped out. A quick, furtive exchange followed. A small package passed from Thorne's hand to the buyers, and a wad of cash changed hands in return. The interior light of the sedan briefly illuminated Thorne's face, a flicker of avarice, quickly masked. MJ's camera, a silent sentinel, captured the moment, the faint click barely audible. The contents of the package remained unknown, but the transaction spoke volumes. This wasn't just missing supplies. This was a black market, running right under Evergreen's nose. The nurses' break room, usually a sanctuary of shared exhaustion, felt like a public square under Dr. Thorne's gaze. He strode in, a forced smile playing on his lips, then turned to Nia. "Nurse Jenkins," he began, his voice carrying just enough to ensure the other nurses couldn't ignore it. "Another misplacement of our high-value PainEase. This carelessness is becoming a serious liability." Nia's shoulders slumped, but she met his gaze. "Dr. Thorne, I checked the inventory. It's not just PainEase. Things are missing regularly, and it's not me." Thorne chuckled, a condescending sound. Always excuses, Nia. Perhaps the pressure is too much. Some people just aren't cut out for this. The other nurses, uncomfortable, shifted their weight, avoiding eye contact. Nia felt the familiar sting of isolation, the tightening net of blame. Her weary denials were useless against his calculated accusations. Nia's heart sank as she entered Mrs. Gable's room that afternoon. The usually spry resident lay disoriented, her eyes clouded, a faint tremor in her hands. "Nia, dear," Mrs. Gable murmured, her voice weaker than usual. "I feel fuzzy, and my pills, they look different." Nia's gaze fell to the nightstand. There, replacing Mrs. Gable's familiar prescription bottle, was a generic, unlabeled container. A cold dread seeped into Nia's bones. She picked up the bottle, the bland label offering no comfort. This was no simple error. This was a tangible, horrifying consequence of the missing medications and Thorne's insidious scheme. The residents weren't just being neglected, they were being actively harmed. The gentle complaints of the elderly now echoed with a chilling new meaning. In the sterile quiet of Evergreen's administrative office, MJ made his secure call. His voice, stripped of its security guard cadence, was sharp, professional, and filled with righteous resolve. He laid out his findings for the corporate board, the falsified inventory logs, the damning CCTV footage of Thorne's clandestine supply room visits, the covert photos of the parking lot transaction, and the disturbing reports of resident deterioration. He didn't just present data, he painted a grim picture of systemic abuse and calculated greed. The board, listening from a world away, was appalled. Their response was immediate and unequivocal. Mr. Jones, the lead voice, Ms. Chen, stated, her tone cold and decisive, "You have our full support. Proceed with a complete public exposure. Justice will be served." MJ's grip tightened on the phone. The green light was given. The trap was set. The undercover investigator closes in, connecting the dots of a sinister operation. Marcus Jones, disguised as a security guard, moved with the quiet efficiency of a shadow. His task: unravel the web of corruption at Evergreen. He focused on the loading dock, a seemingly innocuous entry point, but one he suspected held secrets. Over several days, MJ installed pin-sized cameras, camouflaged amongst the grimy brickwork and ventilation shafts. Time-lapse footage captured the rhythmic ebb and flow of deliveries. He noted a pattern. A particular vendor, a nondescript white van, arrived at irregular hours, often just after dusk, when the regular staff had thinned. Dr. Thorne himself, not a receiving clerk, would often be present, overseeing the unloading with a proprietary air. MJ cross-referenced these delivery manifests with Evergreen's internal purchase orders on his tablet. The discrepancies were glaring, the numbers not adding up. It was a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the system, but to MJ's analytical mind, it was a seismic shift. The doctor's dirty secret is revealed. He's been framing an innocent nurse. Under the cover of late-night quiet, MJ made his move. He slipped into Thorne's office, the lock yielding silently to his practiced hands. Papers were scattered, a testament to Thorne's chaotic, yet deliberate disarray. MJ's eyes scanned, searching, until they landed on a discreet, leather-bound folder tucked away in a locked drawer, its key found easily. Inside, a stack of fabricated incident reports. Page after page bore Nia Jenkins' name, accusing her of petty negligence, misplaced supplies, forgotten duties. MJ's jaw tightened. He'd seen Nia work, observed her dedication. These weren't accidents. They were a deliberate, malicious campaign designed to discredit her, to make her the perfect scapegoat. The anger simmered, cold and focused. Thorne wasn't just stealing. He was destroying a good person to cover his tracks. Pushed to the brink, a nurse fights back against her tormentor, but is it enough? Nia stood at the nurse's station, her shoulders slumped, exhaustion etched into her face. Dr. Thorne approached, a smug smirk twisting his lips. "Nurse Jenkins," he began, his voice carrying just enough to draw the attention of other nurses. "Another batch of PainEase has gone missing. Are you certain you checked the supply room thoroughly? Your carelessness is becoming a liability." Nia's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with a spark of defiance. "Dr. Thorne, I checked twice. And it's not just PainEase. We're constantly short-staffed. and the supply room access logs are a mess. There are systemic issues here, not just my carelessness. Thorne's smirk hardened. Excuses, nurse. Always excuses. Perhaps Evergreen isn't the right fit for someone unable to manage basic responsibilities. He turned, dismissing her with a wave of his hand, leaving Nia trembling, her pleas falling on deaf ears. Other nurses avoided her gaze, uncomfortable witnesses to the cruelty. The undercover investigator faces a moment of truth. One wrong move could expose everything. MJ was in the hallway near Thorne's office, discreetly photographing a schedule that detailed upcoming medication audits, a crucial piece of the puzzle. His phone camera clicked almost silently. Suddenly, the office door creaked open. Thorne! MJ's heart hammered against his ribs, a drumbeat of pure adrenaline. He shoved his phone into his pocket, his hand brushing against the cold metal of his security badge. Thorne paused, his eyes narrowing. "Everything all right, guard?" MJ turned, his face a mask of practiced calm. "Just checking the fire extinguisher logs, doctor. Routine rounds." Thorne grumbled, a dismissive wave of his hand, and walked past, oblivious to how close he'd come to unmasking the truth. MJ let out a slow breath, the cold sweat on his brow, a stark reminder of the risks. The quiet voices of the elderly reveal a troubling pattern of neglect and deception. In the common room, amidst the gentle murmur of afternoon television, MJ sat ostensibly reading a newspaper. He engaged Mrs. Gable and Mr. Henderson in casual conversation, asking about their day, their well-being. "That young nurse, Nia, she's a gem," Mrs. Gable began, her voice frail but clear. "Always brings me my blue pill. The others, well, sometimes I get different ones. They make me sleepy and confused." Mr. Henderson nodded. "Aye, the new white pills. Not like my old ones. My stomach's been off." MJ listened, his expression neutral, but inside, the pieces clicked into place. He subtly activated a small recording device hidden in his pocket. The resident's innocent observations, the subtle glint of his hidden recorder, painted a clear picture. Thorne was not just stealing, he was actively tampering with patient medications, replacing vital prescriptions with expired or ineffective substitutes. Caught on camera. The corrupt doctor's criminal act is exposed in chilling detail. The supply room at Evergreen was a sterile, utilitarian space, but under the cloak of late-night darkness, it became a stage for corruption. MJ had meticulously placed a hidden camera, its night vision lens a silent witness. The grainy footage captured Thorne entering, his movements furtive and practiced. He went directly to a specific shelf, retrieving a box of legitimate, unexpired PainEase. Then, from a nondescript bag he carried, he pulled out an identical-looking box, but one with a clearly visible expired stamp. With a chilling efficiency, Thorne swapped the boxes, placing the expired medication back on the shelf and bagging the good, unexpired drugs to take away. The only sound was the rustle of plastic, the soft click of a lock. The clear date on the expired bottle, undeniable. It was irrefutable. The complete truth is finally revealed, and justice is ready to be served. Back in his temporary apartment, the sterile calm of Evergreen replaced by the soft glow of multiple screens, MJ meticulously organized his findings. Photos of Thorne's illicit transactions, grainy video of the medication swap, the stack of falsified incident reports against Nia, the glaring financial discrepancies, and the recorded testimonies of confused residents. Each piece of evidence, carefully cross-referenced, built a comprehensive damning narrative. He crafted a presentation for the board, a clear, concise outline of Dr. Elias Thorne's elaborate scheme: theft, fraud, patient endangerment, and the deliberate framing of an innocent nurse. A grim satisfaction settled over him. The truth was out. And tomorrow, justice would not just be served, it would be delivered with intellectual precision. Follow the money. The corrupt doctor's web of deceit stretches far beyond the nursing home. Late into the night, Marcus Jones's apartment glowed with the cold light of multiple screens. He was no longer the unassuming security guard, but a digital architect, dismantling a criminal enterprise piece by piece. His fingers danced across the keyboard, tracing hidden transactions through a labyrinth of shell corporations and offshore accounts. Each click revealed another layer of Dr. Thorne's elaborate deception. MJ's eyes narrowed as he uncovered a clear, undeniable pattern of payments flowing to a known, gray market, pharmaceutical distributor. Thorne wasn't just stealing. He was a kingpin, trading the well-being of the elderly for illicit profit. A grim nod was the only outward sign of MJ's triumph. The scale of Thorne's greed was far greater than he'd initially imagined, reaching tentacles far beyond Evergreen's sterile walls. A compassionate nurse faces termination, her career on the line due to a doctor's lies. Miles away, in her small, quiet apartment, Nia Jenkins sat hunched over her kitchen table, a stark white envelope clutched in her trembling hands. It was a termination warning, signed by Dr. Elias Thorne, accusing her of gross negligence, the very accusations MJ knew were fabricated. Nia's heart ached with a deep, crushing despair. Every late night, every skipped meal, every comforting word she'd offered to a resident now felt like a cruel joke. Quit. The word echoed in her mind, a seductive whisper offering escape from the relentless injustice. Tears welled, blurring the harsh lines of the official letter, a testament to a spirit pushed to its absolute breaking point. The corporate cavalry arrives, disguised as auditors, ready to expose the truth. The next morning, at Evergreen's main entrance, MJ stood in his crisp security uniform, a picture of unassuming efficiency. He watched a sleek black car pull up, and from it emerged two figures, Ms. Chen and Mr. Davies, impeccably dressed, their faces stern and purposeful. They were the corporate board, but today they were auditors. MJ met them with a subtle nod, his voice a low, firm murmur as he delivered a quick, hushed briefing. He ensured they understood their roles in the impending confrontation, each detail a carefully placed domino. They listened, their grim nods acknowledging the weight of the task. The stage was set. The corrupt doctor plays his final hand, unaware his game is already over. In his opulent office, Dr. Elias Thorne radiated an air of smug, unshakable confidence. He greeted Miss Chen and Mr. Davies with an overly enthusiastic welcome, his smile wide and artificial. "Ah, the auditors! Always a pleasure," he boomed, presenting a stack of pristine, falsified reports with an expansive gesture. He chatted easily, casually weaving in veiled criticisms of Nia. "Of course, we've had some ongoing performance issues with Nurse Jenkins, but we're addressing them internally." He aimed to preempt any questions, unaware that his every smooth lie was a nail in his own coffin. The board members, however, maintained their poker faces, exchanging subtle glances that Thorne, in his arrogance, completely missed. The nurse's final humiliation. Will anyone step in before it's too late? At the nurse's station, Nia moved like a shadow, her spirit heavy with the weight of Thorne's accusations. Mid-morning, Thorne, emboldened by the auditor's presence, made a point of stopping by. "Nurse Jenkins," he said, his voice dripping with false concern, loud enough for others to hear. "I trust you've located those missing supplies? This level of carelessness is simply unacceptable." Nia's head bowed, her shoulders slumped. She offered a defeated nod, the fight drained from her. In her pocket, her hand clutched the termination warning, a resignation letter already drafted in her mind. She was ready to give up, unaware that justice was now just moments away. A fire drill is called. But it's not a fire they're putting out. It's corruption. Over the intercom, MJ's calm, authoritative voice cut through the usual hum of Evergreen. "Attention all staff and residents. This is a mandatory fire drill review. Please proceed to the common room for an important safety briefing. Repeat, mandatory fire drill review." Thorne, annoyed by the interruption, grumbled under his breath but complied, ushering residents and staff, including a bewildered Nia, towards the common room. A subtle nod passed between MJ and Miss Chen, a silent confirmation that the distraction was underway. The confused residents shuffled along, and Thorne's impatient foot tapped against the linoleum. They thought it was a drill, but MJ was putting out a different kind of fire. Everyone is gathered, but no one knows the truth that is about to shatter their world. The Evergreen common room slowly filled, a strange mix of confusion and curiosity hanging in the air. Elderly residents settled into chairs, murmuring softly. Staff members gathered, some exchanging puzzled glances, others simply tired. Nia stood quietly at the back, a sense of weary resignation still clinging to her, yet a flicker of curiosity sparked by the unusual audit, had begun to stir. Dr. Thorne, still oblivious to the trap closing around him, took center stage, a self-important smirk plastered on his face. MJ positioned himself strategically near the entrance, a silent sentinel ensuring all eyes would be on the stage. The room held its breath, unknowingly on the precipice of a truth that would shatter their world. The common room buzzed with the forced cheer of a corporate event, a thin veneer over the residents, confusion and the staff's weary compliance. Dr. Elias Thorne, ever the showman, moved through the crowd, a forced smile plastered across his face as he exchanged pleasantries. His eyes, however, were keen, scanning for any weakness. They landed on Nia Jenkins, standing a little apart, her shoulders slumped, the weight of a termination letter in her pocket, a heavy burden. Thorne's smile tightened, and he drifted towards her, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper meant for her ears alone. "Enjoying your last few moments, Nurse Jenkins? Such a shame, a compassionate heart like yours, wasted on carelessness." Nia flinched, a tremor running through her, but she met his gaze, a quiet dignity in her posture. Her fists clenched at her sides, a silent battle against the surge of injustice. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. The common room, though loud, felt utterly silent around her. The doctor's final cruel jab sets the stage for his ultimate comeuppance. The murmurs of the crowd began to die down as Marcus Jones, still in his crisp security uniform, stepped forward. He moved with a quiet confidence that belied his unassuming attire, taking center stage as if it were his natural place. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, swept over the assembled staff and residents, pausing for a barely perceptible moment on Miss Chen and Mr. Davies. A flicker, a subtle dip of his chin, a signal. It was a silent, almost invisible command, but its intent was clear. This was it. The moment of no return. The air in the room seemed to thicken, a palpable tension replacing the earlier chatter. Thorne, momentarily distracted by Miss Chen's proximity, barely registered the exchange. MJ's gaze returned to the room, a promise of impending change in their quiet depths. The undercover investigator gives the signal, and everything is about to change. Miss Chen, impeccably dressed and radiating an understated authority, stepped forward, a tablet held casually in her hand. "Thank you, Dr. Thorne, for gathering everyone so promptly for this review," she began, her voice calm, almost cordial. "We've been reviewing Evergreen's recent financial reports, and while your summary was quite positive, Dr. Thorne, we've found a few discrepancies." Thorne's smug smile faltered, a hairline crack appearing in his carefully constructed facade. "Discrepancies? Nonsense, Miss Chen. Our reports are always meticulous." He attempted a dismissive wave, but Miss Chen was unyielding. "Indeed. Take, for instance, the Q3 inventory for PainEase. Your report shows a healthy surplus, yet our routine audit, conducted just last week, shows a significant deficit. A direct contradiction, wouldn't you agree?" The crowd exchanged puzzled looks, a low murmur rising. Thorne's face, once confident, now showed a flicker of genuine confusion, his brow furrowing as his lies began to unravel. The auditor delivers the first blow, and the doctor's lies began to unravel. At the back of the common room, Nia Jenkins felt a strange ripple of energy pass through the crowd. She had been bracing herself for another long, tedious corporate formality, perhaps a new, more elaborate way for Thorne to subtly humiliate her. But Miss Chen's words, so calm and precise, struck a different chord. A significant deficit, a direct contradiction. Nia blinked, her tired mind struggling to process. Was Ms. Chen questioning Thorne? A flicker of disbelief, fragile as a butterfly's wing, stirred within her. She looked from Ms. Chen's unwavering posture to Thorne's suddenly uncertain expression. Could it be? Could someone finally be seeing through his charade? Her hand, still clutching the crumpled resignation letter, trembled slightly. A subtle intake of breath, a tiny seed of hope in the barren landscape of her despair. The nurse watches in stunned silence as her tormentor faces an unexpected challenge. Mr. Davies, a man of few words but sharp intellect, stepped up beside Miss Chen, his gaze like a steel trap. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "And it's not just PainEase, Dr. Thorne," he stated, his voice firm, projecting across the room. Our analysis of the inventory logs, cross-referenced with your ordering patterns, reveals a consistent pattern of high-value medications going missing. Medications you signed out personally, often after hours, but which never made it to the residence. Supply records. Thorne's face began to flush, sweat beading on his forehead. That's absurd. Clerical errors, perhaps. Understaffing. Nurse Jenkins. She's always been careless with the inventory. His voice was higher now, cracking at the edges. But Mr. Davies cut him off, projecting a detailed spreadsheet onto a nearby screen, highlighting Thorne's own digital signatures. These are not clerical errors, Doctor. These are deliberate discrepancies, and the missing items coincide precisely with the periods Nurse Jenkins was falsely accused. The crowd murmured louder, a collective dawning horror spreading through the room as the walls closed in on the corrupt doctor, as irrefutable evidence mounted against him. Thorne sputtered, his carefully constructed composure shattering, his eyes darting wildly between Miss Chen, Mr. Davies, and the incriminating data on the screen. This is a witch hunt. I demand to know who is behind this insubordination. As his panicked voice echoed, Marcus Jones calmly walked forward, his stride confident and measured. He moved past the bewildered staff, past the whispering residents, until he stood directly in front of Dr. Thorne. The security guard stood tall, his presence suddenly commanding the entire room. He looked directly into Thorne's panicked, desperate eyes, a silent, knowing stare that promised the final, devastating blow. The room held its breath, every eye fixed on the man who had been a silent observer for weeks. The his security guard takes center stage, ready to deliver the final, devastating blow. The air in the common room hung thick with apprehension. Dr. Thorne, still fuming from Mr. Davies's pointed questions, was about to launch another defensive tirade when Marcus Jones, the unassuming security guard, stepped forward. He stood at the center of the room, drawing every eye. Slowly, deliberately, MJ unclipped the generic security badge from his lapel. The small, plastic rectangle clattered softly to the floor. In its place, he produced a sleek metallic ID card, holding it up for all to see. The corporate logo, previously unseen, glinted under the fluorescent lights. "Morning, everyone?" MJ's voice resonated, calm but steel-edged, cutting through the silence. "I think it's time you all knew who I really am." Thorne's sneer faltered. Nia, still clutching her resignation letter at the back of the room, watched with bated breath, a strange, dawning hope flickering in her eyes. "I am Marcus Jones," MJ continued, his gaze locking with Thorne's, "a corporate investigator from the board, and I've been here for weeks." A collective gasp swept through the room, a wave of stunned realization. Thorne's jaw dropped, his face draining of all color. Thorne stammered, his bravado shattering like glass. You're joking. This is ridiculous, a setup." His voice, usually so commanding, cracked with disbelief. "A security guard? You can't possibly." But MJ didn't even acknowledge the protest. With a calm, almost surgical precision, he raised a remote control. The large screen behind him, which had been set up for the fire drill review, suddenly flickered to life. Grainy night vision footage filled the display. It showed Dr. Elias Thorne, furtive and shadowy, in the supply room. The camera caught him clearly, swapping legitimate, unexpired medication bottles for a box of older, clearly marked expired ones. Then, the damning detail. He bagged the good ones, tucking them into a discreet duffel bag before slipping out. Gasps rippled through the common room, louder this time, horrified and undeniable. Thorne's ashen face contorted in a desperate attempt to deny what was plainly visible, but the words caught in his throat. His world was crumbling, piece by agonizing piece. MJ allowed the damning footage to loop briefly, letting the silent accusations sink in. Then, with another click, the screen changed. Now, two sets of documents were displayed side by side. On one half, a stack of incident reports, each one bearing Nia Jenkins's name, detailing fabricated accusations of negligence and missing supplies. On the other, the true, meticulously kept inventory logs, showing no such discrepancies from Nia's shifts, but instead significant, unaccounted-for losses during Thorne's unsupervised access. MJ's voice, now tinged with righteous anger, filled the stunned silence. Nurse Jenkins was not careless, she was a target, framed by Dr. Thorne to cover his systematic theft of vital medications and his scheme to replace them with expired, harmful drugs. Nia, who had been watching in a daze, felt a sob escape her lips. Tears, hot and cleansing, streamed down her face as she pressed trembling hands to her mouth. The angry murmurs from the crowd grew louder, turning into a low, indignant roar. As the room erupted in a furious clamor, 2 uniformed police officers, previously unnoticed, entered through the main doors. They moved with quiet authority, their presence instantly silencing the room once more. MJ turned, his expression unwavering. "Officers," he stated, his voice clear and resonant, "Dr. Elias Thorne is responsible for grand theft, medical fraud, and endangering the lives of vulnerable residents. I have all the evidence here." Thorne, now a pathetic figure, tried to bluster, "This is outrageous, you can't prove a thing." But his protests were weak, hollow. The officers, unfazed, walked directly to him. The glint of cold steel as handcuffs snapped around his wrists was swift and decisive. Thorne struggled, his face contorted in a mix of rage and disbelief. But the officers held him firm. The sound of the cuffs echoed in the stunned common room, a chilling finality to his reign of terror. Justice had arrived, swift and undeniable, as Dr. Thorne was led away. His frantic, muffled protests fading down the hallway, a wave of collective emotion washed over the common room. The stunned silence broke into a cacophony of sound, cheers, applause, and relieved tears. Residents, some frail but fiercely grateful, reached out to Nia, offering comfort and thanks. Mrs. Gable, tears in her eyes, gently squeezed Nia's hand. "We knew you were good, dear," she whispered. Other staff members, who had previously averted their eyes, now rushed forward, some embracing Nia, others offering apologies for not speaking up sooner. The crushing weight of blame, the relentless accusations, the silent suffering, all of it lifted from Nia's shoulders in that single cathartic moment. She stood there, tears of relief still streaming, a small, radiant smile breaking through. The common room, once a stage for Thorne's cruelty, was now filled with a lighter, happier atmosphere, a communal joy in the triumph of truth. The common room still buzzed, but the air felt scrubbed clean. Dr. Thorne's shouts had faded, replaced by a collective sigh of relief. Miss Chen, impeccably dressed and radiating quiet authority, stepped forward, Mr. Davies at her side. She cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the lingering murmurs. "Good morning, everyone. I want to personally thank Mr. Jones for his invaluable work." She turned to MJ, who offered a subtle, humble nod. "And to Nurse Nia Jenkins, your integrity and resilience in the face of such adversity are truly commendable." Nia, still a little stunned, offered a small, grateful nod. "The corporate board is appalled by Dr. Thorne's actions. We will be initiating a full internal audit and immediately implementing new rigorous protocols to ensure the safety and well-being of every resident." Her words were a promise of a new era, a beacon of hope after the long, dark shadow of corruption. The staff listened intently, a fragile optimism beginning to bloom among them. Later that day, the main lobby of Evergreen felt lighter. Marcus Jones, no longer in his security uniform, stood by the entrance, a small travel bag at his feet. He looked less like a guard and more like the sharp, capable professional he was. Nia approached him, her face still showing traces of the morning's shock but now alight with profound gratitude. "Mr. Jones," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you. You saved me. You saved all of us." MJ offered a genuine, warm smile, a rare sight. "You saved yourself, Nurse Jenkins. I just gave corruption a push." He handed her a discreet business card. "Keep this, and keep fighting the good fight." Nia clutched the card, her eyes welling up again. They shook hands, a silent pact of respect and admiration passing between them. MJ turned, a quiet resolve in his stride, leaving Nia with a profound sense of hope and a renewed belief in justice. The following week, the nurses' station at Evergreen was transformed. It was brighter, more organized, and the tension that had once clung to the air was gone. Nia Jenkins, now formally promoted to head nurse, stood tall, her posture straightened not by effort, but by purpose. She led a team meeting, her voice clear and confident, discussing the new inventory procedures and resident care protocols. Every item will be double-checked, every medication verified, she instructed, her gaze firm but encouraging. Our residents deserve nothing less than our absolute best. Her colleagues, once cautious and wary, now looked at her with respect and admiration. They saw not just a survivor, but a leader, someone who had faced down injustice and emerged stronger. Nia, once on the verge of burnout, now embodied the quiet strength that had finally brought truth to light and justice to Evergreen. Months had passed since the storm broke over Evergreen. The air, once thick with tension and the subtle scent of neglect, now hummed with a different energy. Sunlight streamed through sparkling windows, illuminating common rooms filled with vibrant activity. New, smiling faces moved with purpose, attending to residents who, too, seemed brighter, healthier. Nia, now head nurse, moved through it all with a quiet authority. She led Resident Wellness Program, a direct outcome of the board's reforms, her laughter echoing gently as she helped Mrs. Gable with a painting or discussed new activities with eager staff. The tired slump in her shoulders was gone, replaced by a confident posture, a proud smile that reached her eyes. Evergreen was transformed. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Nia found herself in Evergreen's newly renovated garden. A blooming rose bush, once choked by weeds, now thrived, much like the home itself. She sat on a freshly painted bench, the cool evening air a gentle balm. The whispers of injustice, the weight of false blame, all seemed distant now. She had stood firm, a quiet strength against a tide of corruption. Her journey had been arduous, but truth had won. A peaceful, strong expression settled on her face as she watched the last rays of light fade, knowing that her resilience had not only saved herself, but brought a new dawn to Evergreen.